Hi, I'm Seamless, and today is Wednesday, and I cannot believe how full of fail today has been. This is the fourth time I tried to record this video. The first time, I erroneously did not check the video before I uploaded it, and boy, was it destroyed and bad and terrible. I apologize for unleashing that upon you. I was also supposed to stream today, and like the internet, I can't. It's just so bad. I'll stream tomorrow, though. It'll be fine. I'll at least do that. But I'm going to make this video if it kills me. So today I want to talk about free. What free is on the internet. The original title for this video, and I guess actually still the title for this video, was Free and the Nature of the Internet. And this has to do with services and websites and places on the internet that are free for you to use, and what that means for certain things. There's a lovely saying that gets tossed around a lot on the internet that says, if you're using something that's free, or like if you have a service, or if it's free, you're not the customer, you're the product. And to a certain extent, for just about every extent, that's completely true. For something like Facebook, for example, you're using it, it's a service that's designed for you to be using, but you're not really the customer there. The way that Facebook makes money is not through you. Very few people actually do stuff like boost posts, for example, or pay for Facebook ads, that kind of thing. However, advertising and sort of revenue based on that is a big part of Facebook's revenue streams, along with data mining. Because boy, are you ever just a hotbed for incredible data for your individual tastes and tactics and demographic goodness and all sorts of stuff that are extremely valuable to people like advertisers. So advertising and advertisers are sort of the lifeblood for free things on the internet, because for the most part, there is almost no other way for something that's free to make any kind of money. And there are a lot of interesting ideas about this. And the one that I'm focusing on is SoundCloud. And the reason why I'm focusing on SoundCloud is because I saw a Reddit post on EDM Production one day about a guy who was lamenting about the way that SoundCloud is going. It's turning the shit. It's going to get subscriptions. It's going to have ads, and it's less quality and put power user features behind paywalls and that kind of thing. And like it's just evil. It's bad. So he said that he wanted to make a new one. And he was asking for suggestions for features, and that was all well and good. But like something just weird struck me about the idea that he thought that he could just go off and do that. He specifically mentioned crowdfunding. But I'm here to tell you, record-breaking crowdfunding amounts could not hope to replace or build something that could replace SoundCloud in the next 10 years. It would not happen. It cannot happen. And in fact, for these certain things, you might wonder, for example, why Amazon decided to buy Twitch instead of just designing a Twitch competitor, or why Google decided to buy YouTube all those years ago instead of just designing a YouTube competitor. Well, I think that might have at one point. But generally speaking, these sorts of services are stupidly expensive to maintain. So much so that even the biggest ones, like YouTube, don't make money. They lose money. And all these ideas have to do with sort of a very fundamental truth about human nature when it comes to products and buying things, is that the second there's any kind of paywall on something, our interest in having whatever that is just gone. But if something's free, we're all just kind of like, sure, why not? I'll use that. That's cool. That's neat. That's whatever. And yeah, like I run into this predictably. Like I'm not saying this is bad. This is just how we roll. But I run into this when I was doing sample packs, for example, because for a while I was doing free sample packs, and I would do them when I reached a certain goal on Patreon. And when I put those up, everyone got them. Just everyone downloaded all of them. And now I'm doing paid sample packs, and like 3 people get them. I like, based on the numbers that I have available to me from on my own platform on YouTube, 70,000 subscribers, 7 million views total, like huge numbers. Laughably small portion of them actually directly buy things, which I'm not saying is your fault, because that's just, if it's not worth it to you, then it's not worth it to you. That's just all there is to that. But SoundCloud and YouTube and places like that don't really have, for that reason, don't really have recourses other than things like advertising to subsidize their existence, because it is extremely expensive, like in multiple millions of dollars a month expensive, and like just astounding amounts of data get used. Like in 2013 there was a thing about SoundCloud about how every minute, or is it day, I forget, it's like some huge number of hours, it was like 12 hours of audio a minute get uploaded or something like that. And it's not just that it just stays there and doesn't get accessed. All of those songs will get, like 90% of them will get a listen at some point, and half of that 90% will get a listen within the first hour. So, it's probably the person who uploaded it, but it's still is getting used is the thing. And in the other video, the example I was going to give as sort of a thought experiment is how much that is really kind of bad, isn't it? That's the worst. That's the worst part. How expensive the Gangnam Style video is for YouTube. At the moment, it has 2.3 billion views. So that's how many times it's been seen. Not necessarily because the way that YouTube works is that it streams a video. It doesn't load the entire video all at once. There's an option to force it to do that, but for the most part, most people don't do that. And most people also don't watch the entire video all at once. But let's just assume maybe they watch half of it. So that's 2 billion people that watched, 2.3 billion people that watched 2 minutes worth of stuff. So 5 billion minutes was served, you know. It's a lot expensive. And we're talking about, I mean, I know that these sort of companies, Google especially, have their own data centers and whatever, but they still have to maintain this stuff, and it's still it's so expensive. It's so much. And the reason why I know it's expensive is because I tried to set up my own thing one time. I wanted to have my own seamless streaming platform where it would be a 24/7 just sort of thing. It'd be like a radio station. Some of you might remember me talking about this. But I didn't want to use at the time Justin TV or a live stream or even Twitch. I don't really want to use YouTube. I wanted to have my own thing that I could control. I could have total control over that sort of deal. And I looked into the costs, and the costs were just astronomical for even just my own stream. And all the calculations I were making were for one person watching it. And if like 10 people watch it, that's 10 times as much data use anyway. And maybe not necessarily 10 times as expensive. Because when you get to be the size of someone like Twitch or Google or something like that, your deals are different, and they're not linear. They don't scale linearly, because if they did, no one would be able to pay for anything. But the point I'm trying to make is that, of course, once upon a time, SoundCloud was better, because once upon a time, SoundCloud had 1/10 of its current user base. And I also sympathize with the problem of being like, well, it used to be better and it's getting worse. The thing is that it's free. And for it to stay free, like for its core functionality to still be present the way that it is at current, is a minor miracle. Because what they do is very expensive, and it is absolutely not made back through things like pro plans for uploaders like me, or any amount of ad revenue that they could hope to get from whatever they're planning on, or any kind of like subscription service. Because the second, I mean, it's not like they're going to convert over to being completely for pay, because if they did that, they lose all of they wouldn't make back the money that they would lose from even the free stuff they're doing, and then they would die, and they'd be dead. They're not that dumb. But, like, I get the fact that, like, it used to be free, and then you want to be more free, and this is actually true for most things on the internet. The internet used to be a hell of a lot more free than it is now. And a big reason for that is because back in the 90s, a fraction of a percent of the amount of people that are on it now were currently on it, which meant that the infrastructure was not even close to being taxed or even used in the slightest. I mean, it obviously was, because it wasn't as good as it was, but there haven't been a lot of wonderful infrastructure sort of increases in recent memory. And so there's that discussion. But the point among the many things I'm trying to make is that ads and vague like subscription and minor paid services are how services stay free, because and you might be thinking, well, why don't the services just make a paid option, and then they're just the paid option? Like, that very rarely ever works. For something, I mean, consider Netflix, for example. Netflix is sort of what people thought Hulu was going to turn into when Hulu introduced the Hulu Plus thing, because they thought, okay, well, Hulu has ads by default, it's free, it's whatever. So here's Hulu Plus, and it was like $9.99 or whatever. It's about how much just getting a streaming plan on Netflix costs. So they're thinking, okay, cool, this removes ads. It didn't remove ads. It added additional content because they got additional licenses for people that wouldn't otherwise have allowed it to be on Hulu for free. But no, the ads are still there, and that's primarily because the $9.99 subscription fee, other than the licensing costs that someone like Hulu and Netflix have to pay in order to get the content they have on their system, absolutely could not pay for everything that they're using. Netflix could exist the way they did because they started out as being a physical service. So that all actually is just a lot simpler than any kind of like internet-based thing. And they have very interesting deals, very interesting kind of things, and they're also unbelievably popular. So that's why their subscription, actually paying for their service, is something that they can do. If YouTube suddenly decided to go full paid, and that's how you had to use YouTube, the amount of people that would stick around to actually use it would net them less money than their current free user base does. And they're losing money. They don't really make all that much money. Facebook doesn't make all that much money on what they have currently, but there's no better way to do what they're doing. And this sort of climate about how the internet works and how content is distributed on the free idea is still the best kind of idea. I mean, this is why like most video games are free to play now, because of that particular process. That is a whole other thing as well. There's this freemium idea and this nickel and diming Skinner box kind of shit, but it's still better than just trying to sell things and being done with it. That has been proven, and that's why everything is that now. But this environment is why it was very ripe and very easy for a service like Patreon to come out of nowhere, and also Kickstarter to come out of nowhere, and to be a thing. Because while places like YouTube and SoundCloud, Spotify even, Pandora, all these people, they don't really have other ways of making money besides the whole ad revenue thing. And so this makes it very hard for smaller people to come into stuff and just be like, I want to do some things. Which is why that guy on Reddit sort of started his discussion by being like, oh, we're going to do crowdfunding, because that's the only way that he would ever make money for this kind of thing, because no one investor is going to come in. Nobody with any kind of ideas and knowledge about this is going to come in and actually pay for it, because the investors in places that are actually successful don't make money. So what you going to do about that? But for people like me, Patreon was wonderful, because people like me generally don't have really amazing ways of actually making any kind of money. I talked about this a bit in the how to make money as a producer video, but like one of the big reasons why I don't push Patreon so much anymore is because I have established other methods of making money. The traditional methods of making money for like an actual artist is to sell music, but that's not really what I'm about. And so there's also sample packs and lessons, and just so many avenues that I have sort of cultivated to create so that I can actually have revenue streams and not rely on everything is free and just have a thing that's free and then everything else is extra kind of stuff. You know what I mean? That's, you gotta consider that whole idea. But this is really, a lot of this really shouldn't be news to a lot of you. And having said it, a lot of this should just be like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because there is just this rampant hatred for when a website adopts ads or adopts some kind of like subscription service for things that used to be free, while they're not keeping it completely free. That'd be like if I were in dire straits and I decided that I was going to make a new series of tutorials, but you had to pay to see it, and like I kept everything else free. Or like maybe I took that'll be a good example. I don't know, maybe I brought back like the track reviews, and that I made that paid. You know, people would be like upset. That would be upsetting. I would be upset. That would be upsetting. But these are not like cable companies who have perfected the art of making as much money as possible doing as little as possible. When people like SoundCloud are doing these kinds of things, it's not because they're being greedy. It's because otherwise they wouldn't exist, because they don't make enough money to just sail on what they're currently doing. That model doesn't work with the kind of load that the internet is presenting with it. It's only going to get worse as time continues, because infrastructure sort of development has sort of stagnated on what are the backbones of the internet. And so this means that as more and more people get on the internet, and developing nations of people that didn't usually have the internet now suddenly have the internet, it's going to tax all of that a lot harder, and it's going to get pretty bad. And eventually maybe something good will come of that, but when they realize that they have to actually upgrade it, and maybe it'll be cheaper, but for the time being, that's just not in the cards. But when I'm saying about people getting all up in arms about when they do these things, you need to understand that there's no other way for it to exist. And nothing will ever be better than that either. Like what I was saying before, but it's just really stupidly impossible for a competitor to immediately become a thing. Everyone's always talking about, like, you know, when is there going to be a YouTube competitor, because YouTube has a whole bunch of weird ideas about what they're doing. But they're just... Nobody will ever be in a position that YouTube's in to deliver the content that YouTube does the way it does, as good as it does, and as free as it does. It just cannot happen. And YouTube is a special case because it's owned by Google, it's operated by Google, and it uses Google services, and it's Google everything. It's actually a pretty textbook case of a monopoly, but whether or not that's a thing is a thing. And the idea is that how do you compete with that? It'd be like any other example of monopoly. You know, the classic case, the whole antitrust thing from back in the day is steel and rail, where there is the I forget the name of the guy that had the steel company back in like the 1800s, and in order to outprice his competitors by being cheaper, he bought out he bought out every aspect of making this deal. So he bought out the mines, he bought out the refineries, he bought out the storage, he bought out the transportation, he bought out everything about it. And so this meant that, like, since he was trading all these what were initially separate industries that are now all one thing, they all buy each other's services wholesale, and they all only pay cost for stuff, which is not what everyone else did. And that meant that whoever this guy was, Google it, it's really easy. And whoever this guy was could undersell everybody, and then that meant that he was the guy that won. Like, no one could compete with that. And that's what Google is right now. Google has the data centers. Google has the systems. Google has the employees. Google has the name recognition, and they have everything about that they can control themselves to make it so that they can operate what they do. No one else renting stuff from someone else could ever do that. And that's why there's no competitors. That's why, same thing sort of with SoundCloud. I'm totally sure what SoundCloud's hosting abilities are or whatever, but the idea that someone could spring up and do a better job is just not going to happen. Same thing with Twitch. Same thing with Amazon. Same thing with most things. And so, like, it may be pretty crappy. It may be crappy that things are the way they are, but it's not about them being greedy. It's not about them trying to just nickel and dime you out of all your money. This is what they have to do to survive. Even with this incredibly good deal I just described Google having with YouTube, they don't make the money. They lose money. Maybe they broke up even recently, but I remember there was a yearly report about how they lose money. Despite how stupidly successful YouTube as a brand is, they still lose money. So that's a whole thing that you really need to be considering when you start getting this idea about how ads are evil and subscription and paying and money is evil. There are a couple of nutters out there that say everything should be free, but absolutely nothing would be possible if it were free. So that's just sort of how reality works. And this is also not necessarily a plea, but this is also why in my videos recently I've been taking to saying, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and remember to whitelist me on your ad blocking and that kind of thing. Ad blocking, I think, is necessary because not everybody is good with their ads. Ad blocking exists because ads just went overboard. Ads went to malicious places that they never should have gone, and that necessitated a service like AdBlock exists. That's fine, and that's ultimately up to the people who host the ads to know that they're going to have those kinds of ads on there, which is a bit harder to do when most people just have Google AdSense and Google just kind of does the ads for them, and it's a whole system that they don't have control over. But ads got to be an issue, and that's why AdBlock exists. And I'm not saying get rid of AdBlock. I'm not saying ads are wonderful and we should all embrace them and watch all of them in full and that kind of thing. I'm just saying that on top of that, it's also the only way platforms like this make money. There are additional methods, and there are subscriptions, and there are even YouTube rentals and that kind of thing. YouTube has other revenue streams. It's just that none of them even come close to touching what the ad revenue makes. That's just the way of life. And that's actually even true for me. My meager 70,200, how much do I have? It changes a lot. I get about 100 new subscribers a day. It fluctuates. Yeah, 70,395. So that's how many subscribers I have. And if I'm diligent about uploading a video, I can leverage that to make about 450-ish thousand views, which nets me almost $700 before fixed takes their cut, which it's a very small cut. And so that means that in quarters, because I get paid quarterly, I can expect anywhere between $1,200 and $2,000, depending on how well things go. And that's by far the largest amount of money that I make. I recently made a crap ton of money doing the sale on lessons, but that's a very specific thing, and usually lessons don't make... they make a little bit more amount. They make a bit more per month, but it's not as consistent. A whole reason why I really, really, really want to cultivate YouTube over anything else is because it's consistent. If I were to just stop now and leave all my videos on, it would be decreased quite a bit, but there would still be some, pretty much forever. And so the bigger I get, the more that'll become a sort of a eternal stream of income, assuming YouTube doesn't die, assuming some weird cataclysm doesn't befall the internet, and assuming laws don't change policies about ad revenue, and then we all just kick the bucket, and everything actually does become free, and then I don't have a business model anymore. Like, that's assuming all of that. That's why I really want to push YouTube to be a thing. To be a consistent thing, and it grows steadily. So in a couple of years, that could be pretty substantial. And like the bigger people, the people who have millions of subscribers, like the Linus Tech Tips of the world, the like the Fine Bros, you know, Screen Junkies, all those people, Cinema Sins, they make incredible amount of money, like just from ads. And I cannot even conceive of other things that they do that even approaches that main part of what they do. It's all from ad revenue. It's all of that. And that's true for any other platform. It's just that, like, you know, my operating costs are subsidized by YouTube. I don't have to pay for my content's hosting. I don't have to pay for, you know, transcoding all my videos to different resolutions and that kind of thing. It's just my startup cost for doing this stuff is basically nothing. So that's why all of this is possible. You see how all these things kind of interact to make it a very complicated picture. It's not just about, oh no, SoundCloud is not letting us have so many more downloads. I don't even know if they're doing that. Or like now they're having to pay subscriptions. They've sold out. Is there a better service? And that's usually, I like that how that's the first thing people ask is like, okay, well, I don't like what SoundCloud's doing. Where else can I go? And people are like, clip it? That's not really... There aren't really alternatives. There are not really alternatives. There might be one day. Somebody might figure out a better way to make this work. And, I mean, people certainly try. Like, you know, people left and right are trying to invent new music services. We have this Tidal thing. We have this Apple Music thing. We have, you know, whatever Spotify and Pandora and Rhapsody have been doing for a long time. iTunes, along with Apple Music, trying to integrate some newness into things. And that's... they're not really working out so well, are they? Well, some of them aren't even a thing yet, so time will tell, I suppose. Nah, that's a whole bunch of words in your face. Maybe that worked out. I sure hope this video didn't die while I was recording it, because I don't think I want to do this again. Anyway, if you have questions about this, please let me know. And as usual, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and to whitelist me on your ad blocking. And as usual, have a nice day. One day I'll do that really good. That'll be funny.